In the year 365, China was a world in pieces. The Great Han Dynasty had fallen 2 centuries before, and its successor states had torn themselves apart in endless wars. In 317, what remained of the Jin dynasty fled south across the Yangtze River, a court of displaced nobles carrying the memory of a civilization they had lost. They called this southern refuge the Eastern Jin. It was a world of borrowed time, elegant, brilliant, and slowly dying. Into this world, in the town of Chaisang, in what is now Jiangxi province, a boy was born. His family name was Tao. His great-great-grandfather had been Tao Can, one of the greatest generals of the Jin dynasty, a man who rose from nothing to command armies and hold an empire together. But by the time young Tao Yuanming was born, that glory had faded. His family was educated but poor, nobility in name, farmers in fact. From childhood, he loved 2 things: books and the open mountains. In his own words, he had never fit the worldly mold. His nature, he wrote, had always loved the hills and mountains. But necessity and the weight of a family name that carried expectations pulled him toward official life. His first appointment came when he was around 28 years old, a minor post in Jiangzhou. He hated it almost immediately. He left. He returned home to his books and his fields, but poverty always brought him back. Over the next decade, he took and abandoned several more posts. He served briefly under General Huan Xian, a powerful and dangerous man who was plotting to seize the throne. Tao Yuanming watched, uneasy, as Huan Xian's ambition consumed everything around him. When Huan Xian finally staged his coup and declared himself emperor, and when a rival general brought him down in rivers of blood, Tao Yuanming had already left, sickened by the machinery of power he had witnessed from inside. In the year 405, desperate for income to feed his family, he accepted one final post: magistrate of Pengzi County, a small district, a modest salary. He is said to have joked that if he could have a few acres of farmland with the appointment, at least he could grow enough rice to make wine. He was 40 years old. He had been trapped in the cage of official life, off and on, for more than a decade. He would not be trapped much longer. After 80 days in Pengzi, a government inspector arrived, a regional official who outranked no one, but whose visit required an elaborate ritual of submission. The custom was clear. Every magistrate must dress in formal court robes and bow deeply to receive the inspector. Tao Yuanming's aide came to him with a warning. The inspector would be offended. Protocol must be observed. The whole machinery of official life required this one small bowing of the spine. He looked at the robes. He looked at the aide, and he said words that would echo through Chinese history for 1,600 years. I cannot bow my back for 5 pecks of rice, fawning and scraping before a petty official. 5 pecks of rice. That is what a government salary was worth. That is what they were asking him to trade his dignity for. He placed his seal of office on the desk. He walked out of the county hall. He never held an official post again. He was 41 years old. He was finally free. On the boat journey back to Chaisang, he wrote one of the greatest poems in Chinese literature. He called it, Return, Come Home. It opens with a cry of liberation. Return, come home. The fields and gardens are growing wild. Why do I not go back? He describes the journey home. The little boat, the wind in his robes, the sight of his house in the distance, his children running out to meet him. He had been in a cage. Now the cage was open. He came home to a small farmhouse in Chaisang, a wife, 5 sons, and a plot of land. He farmed with his own hands. He planted chrysanthemums along the eastern fence of his property. He wrote, From youth, I never fit the worldly mold. My nature always loved the hills and mountains. By mistake, I fell into the dusty net of the world, trapped there for 30 years. Long caged inside the pen, now I return at last to nature. Every morning he was in the fields. Every evening he was at his writing desk with a cup of wine. It was here, beside that eastern fence, that he wrote the lines that would make him immortal. Picking chrysanthemums by the eastern fence, gazing unhurried at the southern mountain. In this there is a true meaning, yet when I try to put it into words, I forget what I meant to say. He was not describing an extraordinary moment. He was describing an ordinary afternoon, a man in his garden, a flower in his hand, a mountain in the distance. And in that ordinariness, he found something that emperors with all their palaces could not find. Life was hard. A fire destroyed his home. Drought ruined his harvests. He wrote a poem called Begging for Food, in which he describes going to a neighbor to ask for grain when his family was starving. He was not ashamed. Poverty was the price of integrity, and he paid it without complaint. Through all of it, he drank wine, not to escape, but to see more clearly. Wine, he wrote, loosen the mind from its pretenses and let the truth move through it freely. His poems about wine and poverty and chrysanthemums became some of the most honest writing in all of Chinese literature. In his later years, as the Eastern Jin dynasty crumbled around him, as Liu Yu seized power and declared a new dynasty, Tao Yuanming withdrew further into his inner world. He refused to serve the new regime. He kept writing, kept farming, kept drinking. He watched the river from the hillside and thought about what it meant to live and to die without regret. It was from these years of watching and thinking that his greatest prose work was born. Around the year 421, he wrote a short prose piece that would change Chinese literature forever. It begins simply. During the reign of Emperor Taiyuan of Jin, a fisherman from Wuling County was rowing along a stream when he lost his way. He followed the water until he came to a forest of peach trees in full blossom, stretching for hundreds of paces on both banks. No other tree in sight, only pink petals drifting down through fragrant air. Astonished, he rowed further, wanting to find where the grove ended, and where the stream ran out of the rock. He found an opening, barely wide enough to pass through. Beyond it was light. He squeezed through the opening and entered a vast valley. Level farmland, well-built houses, fertile ponds, mulberry and bamboo, roads crossing in every direction. Chickens and dogs, children and old men. The people wore old-fashioned clothes from another era, and they were peaceful and happy. When they saw him, they were startled. He told them how he had come. They brought wine, cooked a chicken, and feasted with him. He asked how they came to be there. Their ancestors, they said, fled the chaos of the Qin dynasty hundreds of years before, and had lived here ever since with no news from outside. They had not heard of Han, nor Wei, nor Jin. They did not know what dynasty now ruled the world. After several days, the fisherman left. As he went, he marked the route carefully, intending to return. But when he reported the place to the local governor, and officials were sent to retrace the path, the marks were gone. The road could not be found. A famous recluse named Lu Ziji set out to find it himself. He fell ill and died before he could. And after that, Tao Yuanming wrote, no one ever again sought the ford. The peach blossom spring was not destroyed. It was simply unreachable. It existed only when you wandered into it freely, without ambition, without a plan to bring others back. Tao Yuanming died in 427 at the age of 62. He died in poverty. He left behind a small farm, 5 sons, and a body of poetry that his contemporaries largely ignored. But 600 years later, the great Song dynasty poet Su Dongpa, one of the most celebrated writers in Chinese history, wrote over 100 poems in response to Tao Yuanming's work. He wrote, I have loved Tao Yuanming all my life. His poems are plain, but in the plainness, there is something extraordinary. Su Dompa was in exile when he wrote this. He was picking vegetables in his own field, far from the court that had discarded him. He understood perfectly. Today, 1600 years after his death, the lines he wrote by that eastern fence are still memorized by every Chinese schoolchild. The chrysanthemum remains the symbol of integrity in Chinese culture, partly because of him. The phrase peach blossom spring is still in daily use, meaning any ideal, unreachable place of peace. And the phrase he spoke as he walked out of the county hall, "I cannot bow my back for 5 pecks of rice," is still spoken by anyone who chooses their dignity over a salary. He found his paradise. It was a field, a fence, a flower, a mountain in the distance, and the freedom to see it unhurried, without anyone telling him to bow.